Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Wherever you're joining us from around the world, we're grateful to have you here with us. Today's show is Authentic Achievements, and Authentic Achievements was born out of my desire to create a space where we could share people's lived experience to help others who are facing similar challenges to have inspiration to overcome. And today is no different. Today, I am delighted to be joined by the fabulous Caroline Purvey. Caroline is a global health empowerment visionary who ensures that you don't let stress and drama impact your life, to take control of your health, be empowered, and discover resilience and peace. She's also a best-selling author, international speaker, and global award winner. Without further ado, Caroline, welcome.
Oh, delighted to be joining you, Kim, and I feel honoured and privileged to be here sharing with you today.
Oh, bless you. It's absolutely our pleasure and privilege to have you along with us. Could you start by sharing with us about your journey so far?
Well, you know, Kim, I'm a great believer that everything I've ever done has led to where I am today. And I believe that for everybody. You know, we're on our life journey, and sometimes we don't know why we end up having to deal with situations, but then later on we realise that actually that is serving me well now. And my journey has led me to experience the business world, running my own businesses, taking my degrees later on in life, teaching in education, because in business I did youth work, voluntary, and then to teach business in schools to young people seemed to make a lot of sense. After I finished my degrees, I wanted to keep learning, but I wasn't quite sure what. And I was introduced, strangely enough, to a yoga class. Mm-hmm. Having not done yoga before, I had a brilliant teacher. She was from South Africa, and it encapsulated me. I also, when I finished my degrees, had the opportunity to train as a yoga teacher. I trained in reflexology and energy healing. Why? Because I wanted to do something different with my hands. But, you know, with all of those health aspects, head massage as well, I was able to teach it in the school to the adults and the young people. But when I came out of education, passionate about yoga, I opened up my own yoga studio.
Wow.
I was introduced to something in South Africa by one of my students. And it is a great story in itself, but, you know, time's of the essence in this sharing today. But I found myself in South Africa at a time I was meant to be there. My daughter was due to have her first baby. Birth, like death, comes when it's ready. Yeah. And having made a phone call to South Africa on the night I was told about something, I booked 2 tickets. We arrived on the Monday, the baby arrived on Wednesday, and Friday I'm in a venue with 99 other people from around the world, learning something I'd never heard of before, but it was to do with releasing from the body the impact of stress and trauma. I stood up at the end of the 3 days and I was totally blown away by what my own body was able to do to heal.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going back to make this happen in the UK. My vision and mission has been constant ever since. And it's not just now a mission in the UK, it's a global mission, because I've spent the last 13 years. I dropped all my other therapies. I still teach yoga, but my journey today is empowering individuals with the knowledge, the experience, and the guidance and support that I have accumulated in my experiences over the last years to take control of their own health and well-being and heal from the past. It's powerful, empowering, and transformational.
Wow. I mean, what a journey. And I think we do end up where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there, don't we? We find that I often think life only really makes sense in the rearview mirror. You kind of look back and go, oh, right, that's why that happened. And that's why I was there. So how do people go on that journey to perhaps first recognize that they're carrying the trauma from stress and anxiety? How do people first spot that? Because I guess that's the number one, isn't it? Until they can't come to you to help solve it.
Well, you know, I bring hope into people's lives. And when people come across my work, whether it's through my book, through talking, sharing, somebody's recommended, I often hear, I have spent thousands of pounds on my healing and I just don't feel that I am there. There's still something going on in my body and I don't know how to shift it. Now, the fascinating thing is I like simple language, and whilst I've got all the science behind what I do, we're all stress buckets and we all fill our bucket with our history. So that's, you know, all the hurt, the stress, the overwhelm, the trauma, the rejection, abuse, anything that anyone's ever gone through, it just goes in our bucket. And we start to recognize when that bucket gets full because it impacts us physically, mentally, and emotionally. So physically, we might start to notice back, hip, neck, shoulder pain, headaches, anxiety, depression, gut problems, constant urination, problems sleeping. The list is endless. But high blood pressure and, at worst, stroke, heart attack, cancer, suicide. And I do not like that word because nobody wants to take their own life.
No.
They just have got a bucket so full they don't know how to empty it. And it's at that point, and I often find it's when people get to their lowest that they desperately start to seek something, because as that bucket fills, it creeps up on us. So it's not instant that one's got high blood pressure, it's a build-up over time. And this is something within my message, because every stressful, overwhelming, traumatic experience, we draw tension into our body. And that tension, as energy beings, becomes blocked energy in the body's muscle memory. And so it impacts our nervous system and all the systems in our body. So we start to break down. But it's simple to release it when we know how.
Okay. I mean, it's true, isn't it? Sometimes if we don't slow down, if we don't take a moment, our body will do it for us. You know, it will force us into a situation of doing something different. I remember many years ago when my nan was unfortunately very, very unwell, and my mum wasn't dealing with it. She went temporarily blind, and they couldn't find no reason for it, but it was just that bucket had overflowed, and because she wasn't addressing it, the body made her shut down. So when we're getting to that stage and we know that we've now consent that bucket is full to overflowing, what can we do?
Well, let me tell you what everybody does do. You can't talk it out the body, but people do a lot of talking. But from Professor Gordon Turnbull, who's a world-leading trauma psychologist, the first thing he ever said to me back in 2012 was, we now know we cannot talk it out the body, we have to get it out. And given that people's trauma starts on the day they're born, that's the same for all of us. We don't remember it, but our body does. So we can't talk about a problem if we're not aware what the problem is, because children block their trauma, the feelings, the emotions, and the experiences that they had. But it comes back later in life to haunt. Go to the doctors, wave your magic wand, give me the pills, the lotions, the potions, make me better. Sticky plaster, because you have to get to the root of the problem. One can ignore it and say, well, I'm a tough bucket. We do a lot of work with the service sector, and they're what I would call the tough buckets, you know, the heroes taking on everybody's trauma, but not actually recognizing that they're taking that trauma on themselves. If you've got deep pockets, like many, I've already said, spend thousands trying to heal. Do something to me, anything. I gave up my reflexology, my head massage, my energy healing, when I discovered that actually the body has the answers to heal itself. Working with the releasing at the highest potential energy vibration that we can. And then, of course, finally, people take comfort by getting dopamine. And dopamine is a feel-good factor, that chemical that just blocks our problems. But how does that dopamine get taken? Through foods, and the wrong foods. Sugary, pizzas, stuff that makes people feel good while they're eating it, the chocolate, the cake. But it doesn't benefit them in the long run. Alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, any other OCD behavior, that can be excessive fitness regimes, shopping, gambling. But the problem is when the effect has worn off, they want more. And so it's a repeat behavior. And then what do we get? Addictions. I guarantee that anybody with an addiction is masking a history of trauma. And that can go back to the day they were born. And they may not remember it, but their body does. And that is why they've fallen into that trap. Wow. So the only way one can heal is to release the trauma from the body, which sits deep in the core, in a muscle that no one's heard of. Fascinating work.
Wow. I mean, it is really fascinating. So how, if it's a muscle we've never heard of, how do we learn how to find it and then clear it out? So that wasn't a very articulate question, but
I know what you're saying. Yes, you know, it's the psoas muscle. Let me spell that for your listeners. PSOAS. The psoas muscle sits deep in the core of your body. And even if you were to shut your eyes for a moment and visualize deep inside, take yourself from the front to your back body, right behind your organs, under your diaphragm sits the psoas. It goes right down behind all your organs to the top of your legs. This muscle holds your upper body to your lower body. But most important, it's your fight-flight center. It's where you hold fears and emotions. When you come into the world, what does a baby initially do? It goes into startle response. You know, where the core's drawn in and the arms and the legs come forward. It's that same thing that happens to us. If we were sitting in a car as a passenger and the brakes get rammed on, what do? Our body does it automatically. It goes into that tonic freeze for a moment. Then there might be fight, flight. And that happens when we go into freeze, fight, flight. Chemicals flood the body and we get that adrenaline rush, depending on the severity of the potential trauma or the trauma we find ourselves in, until it's resolved and we can move on. What we're supposed to do is release the tension from that episode and the adrenaline and cortisol, but we don't. And that, regrettably, is why we're all in a state of flux, physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Wow. It's amazing it's such an important muscle. It's one we've not heard of. And as you say, you know, we we all have those moments, don't we, of kind of fight or flight, or that can put us in that state of not doing anything. So once we've got to that point, so we understand that we need to do a something, that you've talked through some of the ways that we hide it through addiction or through behavior that's not going to help us. But at the point that actually that platform's burning too boldly, we know we need to make a move. So how do we then, so we know that's what we need to focus on. We know that actually it's our psoas muscle that needs to be cleared. How do we actually do that?
Well, you might be surprised to know that I could probably get a 10-year-old to show you how to do that.
Wow.
Because our body, you know, we have three things that keep us thriving in life: our breath, our heart, and the missing piece of the jigsaw, the ability to release from the impact of stress and trauma. People don't know much about their breath or their heart. In fact, a lot of people are not that knowledgeable about their own body, and yet we live in it. But they notice the breath and the heart when something starts to go wrong, and then they're either incapacitated or it's game over. As we fill our bucket with our stress, tension building in the body, disrupting all our functions, so that we start to deteriorate quicker than what we should be, spiraling downwards. Animals, and we're all animals, do exactly what we're supposed to do. Let me give you an example. The lion chases a zebra. The zebra runs and runs until he's free of the predator. He does one thing before he eats grass, and that is to tremor, to let the body, well, he allows the body to tremor. It just happens spontaneously. Anyone out there with dogs may have seen their dogs tremoring. And no, it's not because they're frightened. It's because they're letting go. They're letting go of the tension, adrenaline, and cortisol from their body, from that event they've experienced. And that's a fascinating thing. Otherwise, how would animals in the wild survive? I've got a client who has said, I've seen that so many times. It makes so much sense. But unfortunately, as human beings, we have lost that ability. And so therefore we suppress. We have suppressed all our blocked feelings, emotions, the pain, and the memories in our bucket. And of course, all the therapies that are out there have helped to keep the top off that bucket, because without them, for many people, they wouldn't be alive today. And so therefore, taking care of oneself is important. So whether you go for a daily walk, being out in nature, go for a run, jump in a cold tub. I've never got that one, but still, that's what a lot of people do. I know why they're doing it, because they don't know what else there is to do. Whether that's talking to a friend, whether that's going to a yoga class, or paying for therapies, to have treatments, to just give them a feel-good factor and help the bucket from overflowing. But the process that we teach is to activate the psoas. It's ultimately, all it requires is for one to lay on the floor, listen to my voice, activate the psoas, and let the body do the talking. And that's where the power is. You know, we're so in our headspace, and we so think that block the thoughts, push them away, write on paper, burn them, put them in a balloon, let it fly off, that suddenly we're healed. But the interesting thing is, the mind and the body are connected. And if our health service was to join the dots, that instead of saying you've got gut problems, go see the gut doctor, back problems, go see the back doctor, headaches, go and see the specialist, counselling for the anxiety and depression, everything comes from the bucket. And if you empty the bucket, optimum health returns. And so one lays on the floor 15 minutes, then 20 the next week, 25 the next, 30 the next, building up and letting the body just layer by layer discharge the blocked energy. And that's where the fascination blows people's minds, that their body can do something they've never ever encountered.
Wow. I mean, the human body is an incredible thing, isn't it? It's a, I mean, it's a miracle in all the things that it can do. So I guess on the one hand, it shouldn't come as a surprise to us that it can, and yet I don't doubt for 1 second that it does. I'm sat here just fascinated, thinking, wow, we know just what we know that the human body can do so many great things, but and how, so when did we start? So somebody started this, so they're going through and they're learning that technique to be able to do that release and kind of let the tension go. Is there kind of a rough guide to how long it takes? I mean, you've said building it up, but is this a process that you need to do for life? Is it something that once it's cleared, you do less regularly?
That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
We empower people with the education and the knowledge, because that is the important bit. Like I said, I can get a 10-year-old how to activate your psoas to show you that. But that is not it. It's not how you feel when you've done your release. It's what happens in the days that follow. And that's where one gets the power. Now, I had a new client come in this week. She'd been anxious for pretty much most of her life that she can remember. And she's early 60s. And she said to me, I'm now fed up. I have to put a stop to this. She said, and I've tried so many things and I came across your work. And I said to her, you can start to heal, and you can start to heal today. And she asked me that very question, how long is it going to take? So I had a little laugh and I said, well, how long is a piece of string? Look, it depends on your age, on your experiences, how full your bucket is. But like I said to her, I guarantee that when you start releasing, you start healing. And layer by layer, the history disappears. And when you've healed, when you can talk about it without the emotion, without the feelings, because it's gone from your body. But then we can't stop life happening, can we? Every day, we never know what we're going to see, what we're going to hear, what we're going to face, what's going to be piled on us. And so therefore, it becomes a habit. It's a life tool and a tool for life. And that's what we educate people with. You don't just do it, you feel better and then you stop. And the number of people I've had back over the years, I've lost the link to my program. Life has struck me bad, or I've lost my husband, I've lost my wife, or we had an accident in the family. So many disasters. And some you just cannot predict. They just happen. And that's part of our life journey. But when you've got the tool to let go of that straight away. Yesterday I was in London and I was delighted to have been invited as the guest speaker to the London Fire and Rescue Service. And boy, was there trauma in that room.
Yeah.
But to be able to educate them and say, it's not the talking that's ever going to get rid of your PTSD. And it's not holding it in that builds resilience, because all you're doing is suppressing. But gave them a talk that gave them hope. And when they came up afterwards and said, gosh, that was so refreshing. We need something new because there isn't anything. And there isn't. It's the same processes going around the revolving doors. And I am not knocking them for any reason. What I'm saying is they help, but they don't heal. They're management tools. All healing as we know it comes from the outside in. We have to understand that deep healing has got to come from the inside out. Then it enhances everything. And the great thing about the fire service, or people that are already highly traumatized, invariably they've got on hand psychologists, therapists, counselors. Because the fascinating thing is, like I said before, how can you talk about the problem when you don't know what it is? But when somebody releases, their memory recalls what happened to them when they were a baby or a child. And when one woman said to me, I saw myself as a 3-year-old and what those boys in the village did to me. She said, now I know why I am the woman I am today. And I said to her, now you need to go and talk about this with a professional and process from it. Yeah. But she couldn't do that before. She knew there was something wrong. But when the body lets it go, then it becomes your story. You know, everybody's got a beautiful story inside them to share with others that struggle. But until they let go of the feelings and emotions, they're trapped.
That's so true, because I guess until you can release it, every time you share that story, to an extent, you relive it. But when you still relive it with all of the emotional baggage and trauma that comes with it. And so for a lot of people, they stop sharing because it's just too painful. With what you're sharing, is it's saying actually you can clear that part out, so that almost I'm kind of envisaging it's almost like you're telling somebody else's story. You've got the same level of emotional attachment as if it happened to somebody else, because you've then released it. Would that be fair?
Yes, absolutely. You tell your story with the passion and compassion, knowing that other people in your audience, and it doesn't matter if it's just one person, if they can relate to your story and they know that you've healed, they've got hope for themselves.
I love that. It's so true, and something I say so often. It's like, you know, if it helps just one person, then it's worth taking the risk and sharing your lived experience, because, you know, if somebody had shared that with you, you might have had that in your toolkit when you were facing whatever challenge you were facing.
Absolutely. And the number of people that say to me, I wish I knew this when I was a child.
Yeah, because I think, you know, very, very often, I'm a proud mum to a little girl, and you know, I spend every day hoping that I'm not doing anything that she's going to have to recover from as an adult, because we do, don't we? We end up as adults recovering from the things that happen to us as children. You mentioned that, you know, you could get a 10-year-old to do this. What's the youngest somebody could learn?
I've got 4-year-olds out there that are doing this process. Why? Because they've been through trauma. I've got a mum, a young mum, that's starting with her boy tonight. He's 6. Children that have been through trauma are fully aware of their own suffering, although they can't articulate it. And our mission, my company, I have 2 companies, TRE UK, and within TRE UK, my original program, the Total Release Experience, is there for individuals. But we've created Release, Recover, Discover. It's a community interest company, because our mission is to get our work into schools. For 3.5 years, and I worked with my son, he turned his own life around after his acrimonious divorce when he was living in Germany, and he had 3 young children. He was broken. And the incredible thing is that he taught his children, and he has the 3 most grounded children, my grandchildren, you know, that are now sort of 19. One of them is 19 today, and the girls are older. And they have a nice, wonderful, grounded, stable experience of life because they've healed from their past. Children heal very quickly, and any adult that does our process through the Release, Recover, Discover program, the money goes into the pot, and I will train 2 teachers, doesn't matter what country in the world they are. Daniel's turning our program into multi-languages. We're already starting to work with Africa. I went to Africa. I know I digress, but it's about children. I went to Malawi in 2018 on an expedition, and I went on a mission. And when we went to a Yoda Children's Centre, the children out there, they suffer abuse, they suffer poverty, neglect, abandonment, all kinds of trauma. And since 2018, and I'm still working with them, they have reached out to over 6,000 children.
Wow.
Fantastic. And yet in this country, to get into schools, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but instead of finding out more, there's often the barriers up because the adult has the fear that they don't know what it is. But the joy is it's natural and innate in every human being. And if children get to do this, they break the chains. Because we worked in prison, my son and I, for 3.5 years before COVID. And I always said, get me into prison. It's full of angry children. And so it was. And when they started to heal, what they brought up, their experiences they shared, for once, they were able to express emotion, but to do that in a group of fellow inmates and all understand, you know, it's so powerful. And the joy of the work being in prison, my idea is to prevent anybody going to prison. But at least if they release in prison, they leave their past behind. They come off their drugs and their addictive behavior and their anger, because these are all the things that impact us all differently, but come from deep-seated trauma from childhood. And so, yes, children can learn, and it's a great parenting tool. You know, how do children learn from adults? How to manage their stress and anxiety? They can only see what's going on in the world. Bury yourself in social media, smoke, drink, take drugs when they get to the teenage. Young people self-harm. And they look to the adults and see them shouting and getting angry with each other or fighting. And it's got to stop. Because across the world, with the wars that are going on, we're seeing the children. And the only thing they're noticing is fighting and anger. And will they ever recover from that? Well, our mission is to endeavour to get our process into all of these countries eventually, so that we live a happier, peaceful life and live in a more peaceful world.
Wow, what an amazing mission to have, and happy birthday to your grandchild as well for today. Thank you for sharing that bit with us. It's true, isn't it? We see, you know, I see it in my little girl, because she emulates what you do and say, you know, from being very, very young age. I remember coming out of one friend's house, and one of the other children had been behaving quite badly, and so I went, well, Mummy, that wasn't very appropriate, was it? And I was like, you're far too young for that to have been your sentence, but clearly that's because, you know, she's just copying what you do and what you say, and I'm extremely conscious of that and try really hard to make sure that I bring her up in a house where we talk calmly about things, but it's still only scratching the surface, isn't it, of how you give her and all the children, you know, the tools with which to take back control. Because I think very often the trauma is about having lost that control, isn't it? Having had something forced upon us that we weren't able to protect ourselves from or have a say in, and then we act out as a result of that, and that feeling like, well, if I can't control that, I'll control this. Would that be a fair?
Oh, absolutely. You know, you're so right there, Kim. And I think it's wonderful that as a parent, you're already consciously aware of behaviours and the impact on your child. You know, when people do our programme, they have a form to complete. And in our analysis over the years, you know, what we've noticed is it's when an adult gets to about 50, that bucket is then starting to knock.
Yeah.
And they start to notice and get a bit concerned and start to want to do something, whether they come and join a yoga class or they do something else. But the signs are there. But when a man puts on his form, My parents divorced when I was 2. Why would a man put that on his form? Because as he's got older, he's recognised that, hang on, I didn't have a dad when I grew up.
Yeah.
You know? And when relationships break up, the children get it.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to NHS safeguarding conference tomorrow, and looking at the facts and figures, how over 650,000 adults have been subjected to seek safeguarding support. So there's abuse going on in families. And I know we've seen an increase of it from COVID, but 450,000 children in care.
Wow.
Their buckets are already filling. And something's got to be done. And the one joy about what we do is if 100,000 people wanted to start healing tonight, they can. And that's powerful. And they've got tabs on them. They're not alone, and they've got support.
Wow. I mean, that is just amazing, Caroline. And I applaud you for the mission and the work that you're doing, because it is so vital and so needed. And I'm so very grateful that you came on here to share what you're doing and the fact that there is hope. Because I think that is all we can cling to, isn't it? That there is, that when the fear gets too much, as long as there's hope, we can overcome, we can move past. So just before we go, can I ask, how do people get in touch with you? Just so we make it really super simple for anybody listening or watching to be able to take action should they want to.
Well, they can go on either one of the 2 websites. If they're a business organisation in the service sector, visit rdcic.org or go to my website, treuk.com. Either way, I will point you to the right programmes if you are interested in engaging, supporting young people and being an inspiration for the next generation. You can email me, caroline@treuk.com. And you'll find there's a chat on the website as well, so that you can get in touch.
Wow. Caroline, it's been an absolute privilege to share the space with you and to learn, 1, about a muscle I never knew, and 2, about the impact it can have, not just for me personally, but for the people around me as well, and giving them the right tools. So thank you so much for being on this mission and for sharing it with us. I really appreciate your time.
Kim, I can only say, the privilege and honour is mine as well, and the opportunity to share a very important message, giving everybody another choice.
I love that. I think that's so true. I think for me in life, the one thing that is so vital for all of us is that we have choice. We have choice in everything, and knowing that there's another one brings hope. So thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. And
Thank you.
Pleasure. And for everybody listening and watching, I hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking. And until next time, take care.